President Trump has baselessly declared victory in the 2020 presidential race, despite millions of votes remaining uncounted and many key states still not projected.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
But the race isn't over. Votes are still being counted across much of the nation, and there are millions of mail-in and absentee ballots that have yet to be counted.
We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay?
They're not going to have any success in stopping the vote counting right now. The only success that they may have down the road is in assessing which votes will ultimately end up counting.
The president also began filing lawsuits in multiple states, aiming to halt ballot counting and claiming that poll watchers were not given access to observe the process. State officials have told ABC News repeatedly that votes will be counted in accordance with state law and it will take time. And no local officials have given indication of anything wrong or problematic with the ballots they are seeing. So why is the president questioning the legitimacy of the election?
Litigation has been a major component of the campaign strategy for in recent weeks and months of the Trump campaign. And I think it's pretty clear based on the remarks that we just heard that, if anything, is just going to kick into higher gear. But I do think it's important to make clear there is no basis in law for a claim that counting must stop simply because it sounds like the president likes how the numbers look.
It's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over.
Experts agree there will be a delay in the election's results, but this is no cause for alarm. So why is the president falsely declaring victory so quickly?
Donald Trump has primarily used conspiracy theory rhetoric when he talks about the election in 2020. Conspiracy rhetoric is a self-sealing narrative, which means that logic and evidence are not allowed to count against the conspiracy. And if you say, well, no, actually the evidence shows that this doesn't happen very often at all. There is no mail fraud, for example. The conspiracist says they're hiding the truth from you.
In recent weeks, President Trump has ramped up his rhetoric on voter fraud and focused much of his attention on mail-in ballots.
Because what they're doing is a hoax with the ballots. They're sending out tens of millions of ballots, unsolicited, not where they're being asked, but unsolicited. And that's a hoax. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
I think it is clear that there is no evidence that widespread or systematic absentee voter fraud is a real phenomenon. The Conservative Heritage Foundation actually took a look at this recently and found that over 20 years and over 200 million mail-in ballots cast, they could only identify 143 instances of absentee ballot fraud. So it's just not a problem at any scale. And when it comes to mail-in ballots, they do have the mechanisms in place to check the ballots that are being returned to ensure their accuracy. President Trump has largely polarized the issue of absentee voting. He has cast doubt about voting by mail for months. And I think that message has resonated with his voters.
It was projected that Democrats were more than twice as likely to use mail-in ballots as Republicans this election season. This means that on election night, preliminary numbers for many states skewed Republican. And as the mail-in votes are counted, the results could shift more Democratic.
There's been a lot of talk about how the election outcome will be delegitimized or called into question if we don't have all of the votes counted on election day, which is really a fallacy. When elections are called, whether they be for the House or the Senate and in the presidential race, they are called based on the vote that is already recorded, the number of outstanding votes to come, and a set of typically provisional ballots that still have to be counted. No one is elected on election night.
One way of understanding Trump's rhetoric is to think about it as a paralipsis, which is the rhetorical figure that can be understood colloquially as, I'm not saying, I'm just saying. It allows him to say two things at once. I'm not saying the election is rigged, but the election is rigged. I'm not saying that they cheat, but they cheat.
I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that.
Donald Trump is an expert at weaponizing communication. He's constantly using threats of force or intimidation, like saying he's going to sign up poll watchers, that make you feel like, things are really scary.
By the way, when you see shenanigans, please report it to your authorities, okay? The real authorities. They're watching, and the authorities are watching.
This isn't the first time Donald Trump has questioned the legitimacy of a U.S. election. In 2016, when he won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote, Trump claimed without evidence that millions of votes were cast illegally.
He's preemptively doing that in 2020. So he is laying the groundwork for an argument that says, I didn't lose, they cheated.
This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it. So I just want to thank you.
A close election could allow more room to challenge the results and call for ballot recounts, similar to the Bush-Gore presidential race in 2000.
I think what he's trying to do is prepare the nation, again, sort of setting the groundwork for these arguments that he's going to have later, to say, the Supreme Court should decide whether or not we should continue to count these ballots.
They want to try and rig the election with all these mail-in ballots.
Democracy in the United States depends on free and fair elections and hinges on the peaceful transfer of power.
When people raise concerns about the peaceful transfer of power, it's disconcerting that candidates would question that.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster. Get rid of the ballots and we'll have a very peaceful, there won't be a transfer, frankly, there'll be a continuation.
Whether Trump means it or not, either way, it's anti-democratic because it throws the whole electoral process into doubt, and it uses compliance gaining strategies rather than persuasion to try to convey his message.
Much can happen between November and December to legitimize the outcomes, to clarify any possible errors, and to show that the United States has a vigorous electoral system that can produce elections that have some level of legitimacy for the majority of American people.